Coby White scores his season high in a win over the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to talk about it, break that win down. We're also going to talk about a concerning stat with DeMar DeRozan and Coby White, and a positive one on top of that. Plus, Casey Johnson comments on the Chicago Bulls trade rumors with Zach LaVine and the Rockets eyeing Andre Drummond. We got a packed show planned for you guys today, right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and talk about this dub. The Chicago Bulls got a dub against the Charlotte Hornets, and while in no way we could say it's a big win, it was a needed win for the Chicago Bulls, considering how they've been playing recently. Coby White scored a season-high 35 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, keeps flirting with that triple-double. He's going to get it at some point. Watch it come in like a big game on like national TV or maybe the first playing game. Kobe's going to get that triple-double. It's coming. Nikola Vucevic also has a rebound game, 22 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks from Nikola Vucevic. Ayo Dosunmu with 16 points, 6 assists, 3 steals on top of other things, and DeMar DeRozan with 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And so this was a game where it was concerning, right? The Bulls were down early in the game. They end up getting the lead down to 2, heading into halftime. And there's always that concern about how the Bulls are going to come out in the third quarters of games. We talked on yesterday's daily episode about how concerning third quarters have been for the Chicago Bulls. We have one of the worst net ratings. It was the worst net rating in the league over the last 10 games in third quarters. But the Bulls came back and battled hard in this game. They actually went on a 15-0 run that ended the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter, and it was capped off by a dunk by Coby White, which was out of this world, and the Bulls just played much better down the stretch of this game. But the story of this game is going to be told on, a lot of people are going to hang on the fact of just how well Coby White played in the fourth quarter. We know that the game against the Toronto Raptors, Coby White didn't play the best in, right? And we didn't necessarily go to him in the fourth quarter. It was a very heavy DeMar fourth quarter in that game. Well, it kind of flipped in this game. When you look at the fourth quarter play by the Chicago Bulls, Coby White went 4 of 8. He had the most shots in the fourth quarter of this game. He scored 10 points. DeMar DeRozan actually went 0 of 5 in the fourth quarter of this game, and only scored 3 points. He was able to get to the free throw line 4 times, went 3 of 4 from the free throw line. But the fact that Coby and Billy Donovan trust Coby down the stretch of this game, it was important for, Billy Donovan to show some growth as well as a coach, not to be so reliant on DeMar DeRozan, even though DeMar still got 5 shots. Coby White got the most there. And just how Coby bounced back in this game after the last performance. And Billy Donovan talked about it here.
I think he's always been a guy, coming off of a performance where he's not happy. And certainly physically, I think for him, the amount of minutes he's logged with some of these injuries and the trip and coming back, I personally don't think he was happy the way he played yesterday. Yeah, and that's the one thing I always admire and respect about him is he's very, very introspective. And, he can course correct pretty quickly. And, I've asked a lot of him. I mean, again, it's, 40-something minutes tonight, and he just takes it on. And I give him a lot of credit, on a back-to-back where, he got himself to a place mentally, I think, physically to go out there. But he was really aggressive, to your point. He got downhill. He did a lot of really good things, opened up things for himself and for our team.
And you hear from Billy Donovan just talking about Coby White's mindset. And as we see Coby White developing and turning more into a leader and things like that, it's good that to hear that Coby White has that pride in of himself, that he wants to get better, that when he is down on himself after performance, he wants to have a big bounce back night. That's really good and important to see from a player that's really turning into, right in front of our eyes, our number one option on the offensive side of the ball. So a really good night from Coby White. I love seeing that. Alex Caruso also had 10 points for the Bulls as well, and then he went 4 of 7, but he had a lot of key defensive plays that really turned the tide of the game. Didn't even get calculated for a steal, but he had a lot of deflections. He also had 3 blocks, so love the play from Alex Caruso. But then Terry Taylor playing more minutes than Julian Phillips in this game. Julian with 11 minutes, Terry Taylor with 20 minutes, but a lot of that is because Julian Phillips got in foul trouble early. 4 fouls early in the game from Julian Phillips. It happens. It comes with the territory. Young forwards, they especially depending on who they're guarding, they have a trouble with foul trouble early in. Terry Taylor came in and gave the Bulls some solid minutes, right? 6 rebounds in only those 20 minutes, 2 assists, 1 steal. He only went 1 of 4 from the field, but, he did some other things that really did help add to this game. And then one of the key things in this game also is that you got Jevon Carter only playing 7 minutes. Billy Donovan went completely away from Jevon Carter in the second half of this game, and it seems like Jevon is probably going to be falling out of that rotation once, Patrick Williams and Torrey Craig are fully back. And so we actually got an update that we'll play later on in that. But it's good to see him kind of move on from Jevon, who just really is just not playing too well for the Chicago Bulls. But, outside of that, the Charlotte Hornets had some players. Brandon Miller had about a 3-minute stretch where he just couldn't be stopped. He scores 21 points. Miles Bridges with 30 points in this game, and P.J. Washington with 26 off the bench. But it wasn't enough. The Bulls get a 7-point win against the Charlotte Hornets. Like I said, I don't want to call it a big win, but I do want to call it an important and needed win considering how the Bulls have been playing. Now, with that said, over the last 30 games for the Chicago Bulls, the Bulls are playing, they're 18-12, and they're playing with a 60% win percentage, and they're one of only 10 teams to have that win percentage over that amount of time. Now, I do want to say, I understand the Bulls haven't always played best, but I think even myself, right, we get caught up in how the bad, right? And I said this before, I had a quote that sometimes when it comes to the Bulls, just because of how the last few seasons have went, we believe the negative more than we believe the positive. But the Bulls are 18-12, 60% win percentage over those games. And it's really good to see them have that, be able to kind of bounce back in those ways. And a big part of that is led by Coby White and DeMar DeRozan. When you look at it, Coby White and DeMar DeRozan have been one of the best duos, really over the time since they came together. Since Zach LaVine went down, they're averaging together it's like 40 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists together like that as a duo. And it's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's solid and it's a good combo and a 1-2 punch to have. But there's some even concerns in that as well, especially with the minutes that they're playing. When you look at it right now, Coby and DeMar lead the NBA with 1,721 minutes and 1,717 total minutes played this season. No other player in the NBA has even hit the 700-minute mark. No other player. Just DeMar, just Coby. Now, it's been injuries and things like that to the reason why, but it adds to some of that concern that fans have in regards to, hey, are we relying on these guys a little bit too much? Could this become something that's a little dangerous for these players as we go forward, especially for a team that's already dealing with their own injuries, right? So there's I understand the sign for concern, and that exact number since Zach LaVine went down with his initial injury, DeMar DeRozan and Coby White are combining for 45 points per game, which is really good mark for two players, especially for a team that has its own struggle. 45 minutes per game, 10 rebounds, 10 assists since the day that Zach LaVine first went down and he went out. And so really good. But DeMar DeRozan finished 10th in All-Star voting. Coby White's on his way to being in the most improved player of the year conversation, and it's really good. But the minutes that they're playing with the injuries already being the thing for the Bulls is a sign for some concern for the team. And so, Billy Donovan actually talked a little bit about that as players' minutes and players making their return. And he said this.
And I think with some of the injuries we've had, it's really pushed our guys' minutes way up, and it's just kind of the hand we're dealt with, and we have to get through it. So I give not only him but the rest of the group, a lot of credit for finding a way to kind of, give ourselves a chance to win tonight.
And so, are the Bulls too reliant on DeMar DeRozan and Coby White to just be a ninth seed, right? And so there's some concern for that. Now, not that I'll ever crap on what DeMar and Coby bring. We need it. It's there. It's evident. And so that's a big part of what this team needs. That we need that from Coby White. We need that from DeMar. But hearing the amount of minutes that they're playing, or seeing the amount of minutes that they're playing, and seeing how even Billy Donovan's talked about how they've needed to step up, and Coby's played so many more minutes with all the injuries that we have, it kind of highlights some of the concerns around the way that this team is winning these games and how much we have. We've played the 5th most clutch games in the NBA this season. That's it. The fifth most clutch games. And when you look at, even in this game, Coby White playing 40 minutes like that, it's a little bit, you got to worry about what that could mean for the future of these players. 43 minutes from Coby White, 38 minutes from DeMar DeRozan. And while DeMar has typically been one of the healthier players in the league, and Coby White has had some injury concerns over his career, you got to wonder how much of a toll is this taking on those players as we're waiting for some of these other players to come back. And, so we did get an update on some of the players and their pending returns. That was from Billy Donovan, and Billy said this.
See injury updates. First, Dalen.
Came out pretty clean, MRI-wise.
He took that today? Or
they did it last night, because I think they were having a hard time evaluating him because he was in some pretty severe pain. Didn't really have any swelling, responded pretty well. So I think there's a hope that he'd be back, relatively soon.
And then what about Torrey? How
good?
close is he?
Getting there. I think that maybe, as I mentioned, a lot's going to depend on, I think, these next 2 days coming out of this back-to-back, because we have 2 days game and another 2 days. So, I think our hope is, somewhere in that 4 days of being able to practice limited games, that we'd have a really good pulse. But he's certainly very close, I would say that.
Zach, when is his evaluation day? Is that Thursday? Or
I think the end of this week it should be coming up there. I haven't spoken to, other than him getting treatment and stuff.
We're still talking weeks at least, best case scenario.
Yeah, I don't want to put a timetable on it. The issue is it's the ankle and the foot. I think the ankle's healed up pretty well. I think he's still dealing with some foot discomfort. I think that's the concerning part, and to see how well, once they kind of resolve the ankle, to see, how he's responding. But I do know that he has pain in his foot.
And so, hearing that Dalen Taylor had a clean MRI, really good, could be back soon. That's what you want to hear. Torrey Craig, could return as early as Saturday against the Sacramento Kings. They're going to reevaluate him. And then the Zach LaVine portion of this. The fact that Zach LaVine will be evaluated at the end of the week, but that the ankle is keeping them they're waiting on the healing for that is going well, but then the foot, he could still be out, if you heard the reporter in that clip, for another couple of weeks. And so regardless of what happens with Zach, or if he comes back or he ends up getting moved, adding some depth to this team so that you can come down on those minutes a little bit for Coby and DeMar, I think are going to be important, because you just don't want to risk running your players into the ground. And like I said, they're playing amazingly well. I don't want to take away from that. I'm not saying that they should in any way sit down and the Bulls should just rest them or anything like that. But you got to look at it. When you're playing the most minutes in the NBA, you're two players, and you're doing that to fight for a 9th seed, it's a little bit concerning, right? The depth of the Chicago Bulls we talk a lot about, but that depth has been really whittled down when you have two players that's supposed to be on your bench, and Alex Caruso and Ayo Dosunmu are starting for you. Then you're looking at Javon Carter, right, coming off the bench. So it's something that the coaching staff and the team has to really monitor and kind of weigh what they're going to do with it. But I just wanted to bring that up because once I saw that stat that Coby White and DeMar DeRozan lead the NBA in total minutes played, it's like, wow, that's crazy. And, we got to put in a lot of effort. We haven't been one of those teams that have been able to close out teams very often to where we're playing some of the back end of the bench players in garbage minutes. We need every bit of the minutes that we've been getting from these players. And so, Archangel, and I think Sydney brought it up on the post-game shows of just the minutes that these guys are playing. And I didn't really realize it until I saw that just how many minutes they're playing over this time. It's been a lot, and it's been a concern. And hopefully it starts turning around some because, we got to figure it out. But it's been ugly. It's definitely been ugly. But one of those players that are pending coming back from injury is Zach LaVine. Kind of waiting. Billy Donovan said in that clip that it could still be a little bit of a time for Zach LaVine, and especially that injury. And that was one of the things that were kind of holding back Zach LaVine's trade market. We got word yesterday that the Bulls are kind of not expected to really do much at the trade deadline. No surprise to lifelong Bulls fans. We've been seeing this for the last 3 years. But, that has kind of triggered what's going on with Zach. We've heard up and down things. Detroit apparently is the team that's gotten the closest and furthest along in talks with the Bulls as far as moving Zach LaVine, which would be crazy that Zach, a player who initially requested that trade because he wants to win and wants to play more meaningful games, ends up going to the worst team in the NBA if that were to happen. But Casey Johnson, somebody that I really respect in this because he travels with the team, he's really locked in with the team. When you hear rumors from like other sources that don't necessarily travel with the team, you take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. When Casey Johnson speaks on it, it carries us a little bit more. Still, again, not saying that it's word for word or exactly what's going to happen, but it does carry a little bit more weight because it's KC. And KC, before the Bulls game yesterday, had a pretty in-depth talk about Zach LaVine and the trade situation where he said this.
What would be holding Zach LaVine's trade market back? Is it the injury? Is it the play? Is it the contract? Like what's happening right now the reason why there isn't more conversation around his name?
So even before the injury situations, his contract and the fact that he's been in one playoff series and this is his 10th season in the league has scared some teams off. And that's not all Zach's fault. I'm not putting all of this on Zach, but that's the perception from other teams around the league is that he has not done much to impact winning. So you couple that stuff that was happening before the injuries. And I've always said, like, look, he came back from an ACL. He's fine. He has scope on the knee. He's fine. But now these injuries are starting to pile up. And you can say it's a sprained ankle, but that right foot inflammation, that's a metatarsal bone, and that can be a little tricky at times. And so I can't speak for other teams. I can just guess that there is some now medical things that they're spooked about when you are adding that much money. Mm-hmm. It's the medical with the money that I think is giving some teams pause.
No, that is true.
And then he hasn't played well this year.
Can you get equal value for Zach right now?
I'll just say this. I can tell you this right now. If they do make a move on Zach between now and February 8th, prepare to be underwhelmed.
Yeah, 100%.
If they trade Zach LaVine by February 8th, I think you're going to see it's going to be a move where they just move him, just get off his money. And to this point, I want to stress this. My reporting has told me they are not at that point where they will just salary dump Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Again, a lot can change over the next week.
And so it's really telling. The fact that the impression of Zach LaVine from around the league is one of the things to hear that the combination of contract and injury, something that we've already expected, right? And the foot injury specifically. I love how Casey Johnson talked about the foot injury and how concerning that can be for not only the now, but the future. You've seen players have injuries and lingering things with their foot going on that just last for a season or even maybe more than that. And so I do think that as we get closer to this trade deadline, it becomes more and more likely that Zach LaVine is just going to remain a Bull. And not to say that that's terrible in and of itself. Me and Pat talked about it over on Locked On Bulls, where it just comes down to this. The best thing for Zach LaVine is to play winning basketball. It's to contribute to winning basketball. And if Zach really wants to, whether it's to get out of Chicago or to be on a winning team, Zach LaVine has to realize it's time to sacrifice. Zach isn't going to be the number one. That doesn't mean he can't be a co-number one. That doesn't mean that he's still not going to be a very big part of what the Chicago Bulls team does. But Zach has to come back with the right mindset of coming back to contribute. Now, when he initially came back from injury, we saw some of the best and most consistent defense that we saw from Zach LaVine in a very long time, and that's fine. But he was rebounding, assisting, but sometimes it came off as if it was y'all think I can't do this? Let me show you how to do it. Zach needs to come back with that right mindset of this team isn't the same team anymore. Kobe isn't the same little brother that you left anymore. He's now grown into a leader of this team, both on the court and being vocal. And so if Zach LaVine wants to eventually either move on and just wants what's the best for his career, it all comes down to, you talked about wanting to win. Are you willing to sacrifice? Teams have to sacrifice. Players way greater than Zach LaVine have had to sacrifice shots, roll, and other things to be on a team that can actually win. And Zach LaVine can help this team. I'm not in the mindset of some, even with kind of my critiques over Zach LaVine, where some people look at Zach and say, let's just trade him for anything. And that's another thing that came out of this conversation with Casey Johnson, is saying that the Bulls are not at the point of just wanting to sell Zach off for anything. And, and because that the package that we get back for Zach may be looked at as underwhelming, there's an absolutely reason to believe that the best thing for the team and Zach is that Zach come back and contribute and help this team win over the back half of the season, and it can be done. But Zach LaVine has to have the right mindset to do it. Zach LaVine has to be willing to sacrifice. And like I was making my point earlier, there have been players greater than Zach LaVine that have sacrificed to win games. And yeah, are the Bulls still looking at the ceiling of probably a first-round exit? Yeah, and I understand it's hard to get up for that, but it's what's best for you. It's what's best for your career. People are doubting how you contribute to winning. People are doubting how much you are willing to sacrifice to win. It's time to show that, and you may even find in doing that on this team that maybe even this team can go further than what Zach LaVine thought he could when he initially made that trade request. And so, I mean, I'm not to say that I'm hopeful for a fixing of this relationship between Zach, Billy Donovan, and the Chicago Bulls, whatever kind of overlaps there. But when Zach does come back from this foot injury, whether it's for the Chicago Bulls or for another team, Zach's mindset needs to be on doing the things to sacrifice to make sure you help put your team in a position to win basketball games. And Zach can fit in with the way that this team's playing. You look at how much we need off-ball creation and shooting, Zach can provide that. And not to say that Zach is going to have opportunities to still get to the lane, be the 3-level scorer that he can be, but you got to be willing to sacrifice. And that's one of the bigger questions that people have around Zach. Is he willing to make those sacrifices to put your squad in a better position? It's up to him to show that. And so, like I said, hearing those words from K.C. Johnson kind of really all brought it home, and just how much doubt it is around Zach LaVine and what he's willing and able to do for this team. And so, listen, if the Bulls do make a move at the deadline, they could still make moves without including Zach LaVine. That may be something ahead, but we're moving forward realizing that the most likely outcome is that the Bulls bet on continuity again, and that's going to be quite disappointing. Now, one of the players that are getting interest from around a team in the league is Andre Drummond. Reportedly, the Houston Rockets are eyeing Drummond, Kelly Olynyk, and Clint Capella in trying to find a big man to their roster. So they're really looking at the center market. They have Andre Drummond on that list. Of course, Clint Capella is a starter. Andre Drummond isn't. Drum's averaging 8 points, 8.3 rebounds, and only 16 minutes per game. So there's reason for teams around the league to look at Andre Drummond and his cost-effective contract, which is a little over $3 million, as easy to acquire, and you're getting a big man that can really contribute to your roster. The bigger question is, will the Bulls be willing to move off of Andre Drummond? Now, I from what we've heard before, they're a little bit reluctant for him and Caruso. They really like him. I also think Andre Drummond is a player that may sign a contract extension with the Chicago Bulls when it's all said and done. But the Bulls have to weigh what's being offered. And if the Houston Rockets are offering 2 seconds or something like that, maybe you consider it, but you got to also, who do you have in the wing? Are you going to bring up Adama Sanogo and have him be your backup center? You going to let Terry Taylor be your backup center? So we'll see. But hearing that there are pieces on this Bulls roster that definitely have value, the bigger question is, are the Bulls willing to move off of it? And is the deals that they're being offered for Caruso, for Andre Drummond, are they even worth it? So just wanted to talk about that rumor since it came out that the Houston Rockets have Andre Drummond on their list of potential targets. We'll see if anything materializes for it. But that's my time for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, which mailbag days are Saturdays and Sundays, I trickle in a little bit over the course of the week, depending on how backed up the mailbag gets. The number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.